Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Thank you once more for joining me in our weekly book reading of The Thief That Stole My Time. Hope everyone is having a great week so far. I'm excited to share from this chapter. The chapter is called Deliverance from Bondage, and the subheading that we're going to talk a little bit about or read from is called Mental Chains. And bondage and deliverance, it has been one of the areas that I am most passionate about, because I felt that it was a sense of bondage and being bound in situations and circumstances that I felt helpless to change, that drew me into the presence of God. That was the place that I was powerless to control things that felt like it was too much. It was overbearing and it was too much for me to handle. And there was no way I could change it in my own will, in my own strength, with my own strength and with my own abilities. I was powerless to change certain circumstances in my life. And I saw, it was the first time I understood that Jesus is a deliverer, because I saw his hands at work in my life, delivering me from people and circumstances that were stronger than me. And I believe that there's power in that name. There's power in God's name, because he truly is able to deliver us from circumstances and situations that we feel bound by. He is really, really, really a chain breaking God. But beside all of that, today we're going to focus on mental chains. And I'm just going to read a little bit from that chapter. And so we're going to start with a scripture. It's coming from Romans 12:2. And it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and the perfect will of God." Mental slavery is far more sinister than physical slavery, as its chains are invisible and are transmitted across generations. Although physical slavery is no longer tolerated, many of us are held captive by limitations placed on us by ourselves or others. Our thoughts and perceptions that were influenced by the skewed opinions of others drive our behavior and our response to opportunities. Our self-esteem, which was shaped by our life circumstances, also influence our mentality and perspective on various situations. We determine that we can't before we even start, because we are bound by our self-imposed limitations. The biggest enemy you have to deal with is yourself. If there's no enemy within, then the enemy outside can do us no harm, Les Brown said. Many of us today suffer from the baby elephant syndrome. The story is told how elephants are trained. When an elephant living in captivity and is still a baby, it is tied to a tree with a chain or rope nightly. The baby elephant tries with all its might to break the rope, but it isn't strong enough to do so. It tries and fails many times until realizing its efforts are futile. It finally gives up and stops attempting for the rest of its life. Later, when the elephant is fully grown, it can be tied to a small tree with a thin rope and could easily free itself by breaking the rope or uprooting the tree. But because its mind has been conditioned by its past experiences, it doesn't even make the slightest attempt to break free. This powerful animal has confined its present abilities by the limitations of past experiences, hence the baby elephant syndrome. Human beings are similar to the elephant, except for one thing. We can choose not to accept the false boundaries created by others or the past. The mind is a powerful force. It can enslave us or empower us. It can plunge us into the depths of misery or take us to the heights of ecstasy. Learn to use it wisely, David Cutchery says. Like approval addiction, mental slavery is like a disease that keeps us paralyzed, unable to effectively execute God's greatest commission. Like the baby elephant, my early years of bondage and the inherited limited mindsets of the generation that went before me restricted my perspective. I did not know that I was a giant killer, so instead I was intimidated by grasshoppers. I did not know that there was a sleeping lion down on the inside of me, so instead I would fear the sound of dogs barking. At the sound of the dogs barking, I would abort my mission and run away, not knowing that my roar was stronger than a combination of all of their barks. As long as my mind remained imprisoned, my ability to live abundantly was stifled. I needed deliverance. In the book of Romans, the Apostle Paul urges us to renew our minds, to live an overcoming and victorious Christian life, walking in the fullness of his promises. We must renew our minds daily. The enemy plans to keep us chained and immobile for as long as he possibly can. To do so, he will constantly use our past failures to justify why we can't conquer today's enemy. This is only to ensure that we abort the mission before we even begin. Psalm 119:9 says, "Wherewith shall our young man cleanse his way? By taking heed thereto, according to thy word." How do we renew our mind? By taking heed to the word of God. The voice of the Creator would always trump every negative word or opinion of man. If it would even trump your opinion of yourself, it is his word that we are reminded that what Paul said in the book of Philippians 4:3, that I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. So we see that mental chains are truly our greatest limitation. We create chains in our minds as to what we can and cannot do. We formulate limitations in our minds based on what the generation that went before us did. We think that's the limit. That's the limit, and that's the bar, that we could only go thus far. And we don't believe that we could actually do greater feats because our mindset is limited. And even these mental chains, I think about this baby elephant syndrome. I think it's so powerful. Imagine this elephant. It just teaches us how conditioning, the power of conditioning somebody's mind. You're conditioned to think a certain way, and you're conditioned to be limited for so long that when you have grown into a position of power where you can actually break free, you still think that you're in that place that you were when you were this high. The elephant had grown up and become strong enough to break free of the ropes that had him bound. He was more powerful than the chains that held him. He was more powerful. The strength that elephant carried was so much stronger than that little rope that was holding him. But he was limited by the fact that he was limited by the fact that he was conditioned to think a certain way. And even in our lives, that is how we are. We are conditioned by what people tell us we should be. We are conditioned by a constant reminder of who we are over a period of time. We become conditioned to think a certain way, and we become conditioned to behave a certain way because of the limitations that was established in our head. And it is so powerful that the mental that is chains that are set up in our mind, and we have the power to break it through God and through understanding what his word said. His word, when we wherewith can we cleanse our ways? God's word tell us exactly who we are, exactly what we can do, exactly what power he placed inside of us when he created us. And we are bound by limitations that man set. We are bound by limitations that was established through the generation that went before us, or through the current environment, or through the circumstances, and even some of the relationships. Sometimes we are bound by toxic relationships, and we think that there's no way out because this is all it is, and all it takes is a changed mind. There's power in changing your mind. The mind is the most powerful thing in a human, and that is the devil's has always been the devil ploy, the battlefield of the mind. If he could chain us in our mentality, he could keep us in it right where he wants us to be. And it is our job to basically be understand who God says we are, understand what his word is saying concerning us, and what his word is saying concerning our circumstances, and what his word is saying concerning our situations. And then we'll get the power to break free of every lie that he set up in our head that is keeping us limited from moving forward and walking in the power and the authority that God created us to walk in. And sometimes we are bound by toxic relationships. We are bound by the opinions of people. We are bound by so much different situations, and we make powerful declarations that, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, but we're stuck in one place, and we're not actually taking the step forward. Why? Because even though we're saying something with our lips, our mind, we have mindsets that are established, that has convinced us that we cannot go beyond this point, that we are not powerful enough to defeat that giant in front of us. Because look, that other person couldn't defeat it. Why you feel you could defeat it? Your daddy didn't defeat it. Why you think you can? And it's a limited mindset. It's a limited perspective, and we cannot break free unless we start understanding. He said in Daniel, he said, the day that know their God will do great exploits. We could only do great exploits when we know our God, when we know who he is and who he says we are, and he said that we were created in his image and likeness. So it's only when we understand who he is, we'll understand who we are, because we were created in his image and his likeness. And when we get the revelation of who he is, we will know who we are and what we can do. And we will understand that we are not limited by some stronghold or some mindset that was set up by the generations that went before us, or by the current circumstances that we are in, or by what our environment tells us we are and we will be, and how far we can go. We will make our foundation and let everything be driven by what God says we are. And it is only God and his word could break chains in our lives. Because sometimes we're sitting as a powerhouse. We're a powerhouse, but these mental chains are holding us. And all we have to do is make a decision to take God at his word and run with what his word said we are. Because when we run with what his word said we are, we will do mighty things on this earth. Because we would not be limited. We would not be limited by our circumstances. We would not be limited by our situations. We would not be limited by man. Because we will understand that when we get the revelation of who he says we are, you'd be unstoppable. And that is my book reading on mental chains. I pray that we understand that it is the devil's agenda to keep us bound mentally, because he does not want us to break free. He knows the power that rests on the inside of us. He knows when we take a hold of who God says we are, and when we get the revelation that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us, and that they that know their God shall do great exploits. He doesn't want us to do great exploits, so he will always limit us into thinking that we are such a small, we are so small in the big scheme of things, and we are limited to achieve what we want to achieve, and we are limited to reach further than we are. That where we are is probably just about where we'll end up. And it's a lie. It's a lie from the pits of hell. And when we understand who our God is, we will do great and mighty exploits. And this is my book reading for today. I pray that it blessed you. I want to encourage you to get the book, The Thief That Stole My Time. It's available at Amazon. It's available at all the Muhammad's bookstores and all the RIK bookstores nationwide. I pray that this book reading blessed you today, and I pray that you have a great day, and I pray that you draw closer and closer to Jesus and understand that he is a deliverer. He will deliver you from situations that you feel helpless, to break free of, and you will even shock the enemy. The enemy will won't be able to understand how someone that looks so weak could be so strong. And that is my prayer for you. I want you to confuse the enemy that is standing in front of you. That is my prayer for you. I pray that as you leave today and as you let this word get inside of you, I pray that your life confuses the enemy that is standing up against you. I pray that even as he feels that he's more powerful than you, that he just basically lose all power and control when he see the greater power that is at work in you, fighting for you. And that's my book reading for today. I pray that it blessed you. Have a great day. Bye.